Let's speak to David Kogan, Director of Labour List and author of Protest and Power, The Battle for the Labour Party. David, I mean, you know, we heard a lot about there needing to be reform, and we got the impression when Sir Keir Starmer booted out all of the Momentum lot that he was going to take the Labour Party in a more Blairite direction, but he's turning out to be, particularly on this issue, a little bit more right-wing than some of his backbenchers might have imagined.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? And funnily enough, I think actually it is a Blairite direction. I mean, the Blairites, and this candle is a Blairite, was a Blairite, always believed in sort of reform of public services. And a lot of criticism they got for it at the same time. And there's no question that, you know, when you look at the benefit system and you look at particularly youth unemployment, the figures are dramatic. Now, I mean, you know, we can talk about the budget and the 40 billion in a minute, but if you just home in on that one particular issue, so you're just reading out those extraordinary statistics, I think what ministers in that department, DWP, are sort of coming aware of is we're dealing here with a very curious generational shift, because a lot of the people in that age group were people who were at school during the pandemic. You know, they weren't able to leave home. They weren't able to go and get the sort of jobs we made as teenagers. They then went through college, some of them, and they're actually kind of untrained and unused to the workplace. And so there is this massive shift you've got to take. And I don't think this is a Labour issue or a Tory issue. I think it's a kind of generational issue where those 900,000 people you mentioned who are NEETs and have never worked have got to be encouraged to go into the workforce, and they've got to be trained as to how to go to workforce. The other element which people don't talk about is actually sort of the generation of people who've retired post 50. There's been a massive increase in people who've retired as well. And so both ends of the sort of employment spectrum, you've got people dropping out of the system, claiming benefits, and they need to be put back into the system. Now, whether you do that by cutting benefits, as you said, I mean, Conservatives always believed in cutting benefits. Labour have always given lip service to increasing benefits. It's part of the kind of great political debate between the two parties. But what you can't do, and I think a lot of people in the Labour Party are going to be very worried about them doing, is simply cutting away and cutting away and cutting away without there being a plan to change the long-term employment issues and the issues that actually go to the growth of this economy. So I may be disappointing you by not arguing with you. I actually agree with it. Well, but no, I think it's actually really complicated stuff.
And it is. I think what you've laid out is what I seem to think, which this is a huge cultural problem. A load of young people, they don't want to work. They just want to sit at home and they'd rather be Instagram influencers and not actually lift a finger, quite frankly. Older people think, well, after the pandemic, when they got used to staying at home and pottering in the garden, that's nice. I can probably continue doing this. I think a lot of people out there are work shy. Once upon a time, if you had someone said, oh, I work from home 3 days a week before the pandemic, that would be a luxury. No one would have heard of it. Now it's a top-tier demand. And I do wonder how this is going to marry up with the workers' rights that the Labour Party want to put into place. Because if they're saying, well, look, what we can't have is a load of people saying, I'm off sick, I've got anxiety, I can't come into work anymore, because a lot, especially among the younger demographic, the reason these people aren't in work and those who are taking sick leave are mental health reasons. If you turn around and enshrine sick leave from day one, then employers are going to be in trouble, because there are going to be plenty of people who want to exploit that.
Yeah, I mean, and you wouldn't expect me to agree with some of the language you've just been using. I think using the term work shy and all of this I just think is missing the real problem here. You don't have 900,000 work shy 16 to 25-year-olds. That isn't the problem. The problem is that they have not been trained in how to go to work. And actually, there is a genuine... I don't think these people are work shy. I think these people just have never found the course which is leading them through to useful employment, which in the past would have been much more clear. I also think that, and I'm not, being a bleeding-hearted liberal about this, I just think accusing them all of being work shy and Instagrammers doesn't actually deal with the problem. I also think that the mental health issues, actually, of people who came through the pandemic actually were different in nature to quite a lot of previous generations. And we haven't really dealt with them as a society. So I think we've got to deal with all of that. But ultimately, there are clearly a large number of people claiming sickness benefit, and this is where I do agree with you, claiming sickness benefit, who we need to redefine what sickness benefit is. And we need to actually look at the system to make it actually appropriate to people who need it and inappropriate to people who don't, which is, I kind of think, what this candidate is saying, although we don't really know what she's saying yet, because as usual, part of the problem with this new Labour government is they've left everything for 3 months. There's this great vacuum where there hasn't been a budget, there hasn't been any real policy, and we're also sitting here debating it among ourselves without actually having real kind of stuff to talk about because they haven't announced it yet.
Yeah, I do wonder when it comes to anxiety, my attitude is it's much better to go into work to treat anxiety. I think it's too easy to be at home these days. When I was young and I wanted to have driving lessons, I had to go work at Safeways to pay for it. And if I didn't have anything to do, if I were not in work, I'd be staring at paint dry. Nowadays, you can sit at home with your smartphone and your Netflix and 85,000 channels of television and kind of occupy your time very merrily.
Well, where I agree with, actually, one thing that you mentioned earlier, which I didn't really talk about, but where I do think, I think the 3-day week culture, which is now almost written in as someone's right, somebody of my generation finds that extraordinary. I mean, just extraordinary. But both extraordinary from the employer's point of view, but also extraordinary from the employee's point of view, because actually part of the reason to go to work is you are actually, you know, with other people. And so this kind of culture of sitting at home, even, I mean, assuming people are working from home, but the idea that you're sitting at home, as I am now, looking into my computer as being a kind of lifestyle choice, I personally find very odd. But that's because I'm very old.
No, I don't think it is at all. I think we're social animals and we're designed to have gossip at the water cooler, and people at home not socialising end up with anxiety because they're constantly trapped in their own heads and in their own echo chambers and not going out and having the catharsis of communication and bonding with other people, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It feeds into itself. You get scared of leaving the house. A question I want to ask you is this rather bizarre story, but the advert stuck up on Twitter from the head of campaigns for the Labour Party saying, we want to send 100 party staff to the US to help the Democrats in swing states. I mean, I find that really quite remarkable. What's going on there?
Well, actually, I don't think that is that remarkable. I think actually Labour has been sending people to American presidential elections for donkey's years. I think what is probably less tactful is A, you stick it up on Twitter, and B, it's quite conceivable the Democrats won't win this presidential election, at which point I do think Republicans will have noticed that Labour's traditional ties with the Democratic Party were reinforced by this. I mean, David Lammy and Keir Starmer were, you know, in Washington, New York, a couple of weeks ago and met Donald Trump, I think I'm right in saying. So they're obviously trying to account for the fact that Trump might get elected president. This clearly is not particularly helpful, but actually my knowledge is that Labour have been sending people to work with the Democrats for donkey's years. In fact, Deborah Mattison, who is a key advisor to Keir Starmer, is advising the Harris campaign in America as we speak. So I don't think this is regarded by Labour as being particularly exceptional.
No, indeed. Well, it's Elon Musk certainly thinks this is illegal and is some form of foreign intervention where it's not welcome.
Elon Musk is the man who intervened in British politics when there were thugs rioting on the streets 6 weeks ago and proceeded to give his own opinions about that. So I don't think he's in any position whatsoever to comment on this. I mean, Elon Musk meddles in other countries' politics all the time.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, I find Elon Musk an extraordinary character, but I do find it sweetly ironic when he's talking about this is illegal, these foreign people coming over and helping in American elections. I'm like, mate, you're South African and you're on stage in Pennsylvania. Anyway, David Kogan, thank you ever so much. It's been a delight talking to you.